It started when I was in the 7th grade. I had no interest in basketball. I was a softball player in 7th grade, and so the 8th grade team at Buford Elementary, they did not have enough for the 8th grade team. And so they came into the PE classroom, and I was taller than anyone in the classroom, and so they asked me if I wanted to play, and I thought, well, that'd be great because I could get some new Converse, and I wanted some new Converse. So I was put on the team. In my very first game, I scored 52 points.
Her first year in the 8th grade, she averaged 30 points a game, and we were undefeated. She averaged 25 a game her second year, and her freshman year, we were undefeated in state champs, the first state championship at Great Atlanta Christian. We were 28-0. We went on to win another 28 games for a 56-game consecutive winning streak during that time, and it is still a record some 40-something years later. But she really changed the face of Georgia high school basketball at that time, and I'm just fortunate to have been able to have coached her during that time.
I just loved the game. You know, back then it was just, I'd love to be out playing sports because back then we had no electronic devices. And I like being active, I like being out. I remember my parents, my mother especially, she'd have to beg me to come in to have dinner. I never wanted to come in the house until it was dark. I had to because I loved being out playing sports in a neighborhood that it was just guys. So that's probably kind of where I got my competitive attitude, my competitive spirit, is because I was always around guys all the time. So I had to really play harder just to compete with them. This is my letter jacket, and as you can see, the number 44, there was a reason for selecting that number, and that was because my role model was Pistol Pete Maravich. Besides wearing the floppy socks that I did, I also selected, he wore 44. And so that's a number that has always been with me through high school, college. These are patches that when you would win a state championship, the big thing is to receive a patch, have it sewn on, and then you wear it to school every day for the rest of your life, even when it's 90 degrees. Normally my shooting range was probably about this far out. And it was usually kind of a set shot, but sometimes it would be a jump shot depending on how close the defense was on me. But this is normally my shooting range. I always shot before the defense could get on me, so I guess that's why I had to almost go almost to the sideline to shoot. So they were saying that if I was able to shoot, if we had the three-point line then, I'd probably average 40, 50 points a game. But this was my normal shooting range. When I graduated here from Great Atlanta Christian, I went to Mercer University in Macon, and I was the first women's basketball player in the state of Georgia to get a full athletic scholarship. That was just unheard of back then. And so I think that's when people started really becoming aware of women's basketball and how important it is. And so after Mercer, at the end of my first year at Mercer, they asked me if I wanted to go try out for the Olympics. And then I think that's when things started changing. Because I was on the first Olympic basketball team in 1976, and that's when I think women's history started, and thinking, okay, we need to give this gender a shot in this sport, and we got the silver medal in 1976. So I think again I was in a generation where we started and laid the foundation for what's going on now in our sports arenas.
Some schools didn't even have girls basketball. But Cindy was the most accomplished female basketball player ever at that point. And so I proposed to our board members in the Atlanta Tip-Off Club in 1974, that year, that she be named on the team or given some special recognition, because the Atlanta Journal and Constitution had named her as one of the top 25 basketball players, the only girl to have ever attained that honor. And the board refused to do it and said, we've never done that, we're not going to do that. And of course, Cindy didn't recognize this till later, but my experience with the Atlanta Tip-Off Club and their lack of willingness to do that in respect for women's basketball and what Cindy had done, I took over and was named the president and revised the board, and the very next year began parity, and we had gender equity there.
Well, it was in the spring of 1976. It was the region tryout camp for the Olympic basketball team. That selection, they were going to select 5 from each camp to go to the national tryout camp in Warrensburg, Missouri. So when I got to Warrensburg, Missouri, there was 35 of us. So one of the drills that we had to do full court one-on-one. And for some reason, Pat had them, she drew my name to go one-on-one, and she said she'd already studied me, because she said she knew I was a pure shooter and didn't like to play defense. So she knew what to take away from my game. And so Pat and I went one-on-one, and she beat me like 5-0. I made it through 3 cuts, and then they posted the list. They picked 12 out of the 35, and I was on the list of the top 12, and she was too. And I remember walking down the hall thinking, oh my gosh, you know, I'm 18 years old, I'm going to be gone from home until August. I didn't know anyone, and then I remember she walking down the hall, and she said, you know, since both of us are from the South, she said, maybe would you like to room with me? So she and I became roommates. We lived together from May until August, and like I said, that was just, I think that was a huge turning point of my career as an athlete. But it also now, where I am in my life now, it was a lot more than that. She helped me grow as a person, and that's something I'll always be so thankful for.